All right.
Hello, YouTube. Welcome to another live stream. Today, we're joined by Patrick Jones, a fantastic artist that you have definitely seen on our channel before, if not our Instagram or any of your Instagram feeds, because he's your favorite artist's favorite artist. I know he's mine. So today we'll be having a good time talking about a brand new course of Patrick's that we'll be talking a little bit more about later on, but we'll be showing you some of his process in a video from that course and talking about whatever things you guys want to know from a person like Patrick who has put the time in to gain mastery of his art skills. Patrick, how's it going?
A lot to live up to there. Let me powder my nose.
Now, it's good to have you back, man.
Oh, thanks, Steven. It's good to see you. I get a bit lonely when you're not here. How about that for a romance?
There's only so much time in the day, you know, and we're lucky to get to be able to spend some of that time together.
Oh, so nice. Here, I the thing about this course, I forgot to mention. This is a thorny subject as well. What I'm going to present today, and it's all about who traces and who draws. And who should and who shouldn't. And anyone can if they want. But the detriment of it is that if you begin tracing, it's a dark void that's very hard to get back out of. And at the other end of it is the lack of skills. Your skills just dissipate. And I learned this in a professional capacity when I walked into a studio for the first time. Everyone was tracing. And I went, what's this? And they were all pros, they were top pros. They're all tracing in this. It wasn't a light box. It was called an artograph. And it had curtains, and you put your head in it, and you traced the photographs that were underneath. And the thing with these guys, they were so brilliant at what they did, is they didn't copy. They just traced the outline. And then they embellished it later. And they proved to me that the only people that should trace are professionals, not the amateurs, because they knew what to do with it. But at the very end of it all, they did lose their skills, even then, because they then had new skills, and their new skills was embellishment. So basically a bit like, let's say in the comic books, you would have Jack Kirby, he'd be the penciler. Then there would be the inker, they would be the embellisher, and they would make it even better if they were really good at their job. Like Alfredo Alcala would make John Buscema's work better, I thought, anyway. And you could tell by the inkers whether they were good inkers or not, because you would look at John Buscema's work in different comic books, and according to what inker he had, his work would look bad. Never terrible because he was too good, but it would look bad and clumsy sometimes, and then it would look magnificent in other times. And John was never different. His pencils were always the same quality, but the inkers made them either better or worse. And Alfredo Alcala did such a magnificent job on it. And so that's what they were. They were embellishers of what they had to work with, which is photographs. But they did lose their skills, and I lost mine. And I remember I went, I don't want to do this anymore. And I started doing cartoons because you didn't need to trace. And you never needed to trace, but the art directors wanted a photorealistic drawing in an hour, which was impossible. We're going to, Raphael, can we bring the models in now and set them up? And you start to draw.
Knock out 40 different drawings inside the hour.
You probably get an eye done before and send that fax, by the way. Fax that off to the art directors. What the bloody hell? So they just go onto there and they would just trace it really fast, and they'd send it to the art director and go, wow, what magnificent artists. And then you would make something of it. So what I'm going to do today is, this is a part of a course that I worked on over 5 years. So I had a cohort of 10. At the very start, I had 15, but I worked out that 15 was not hard work, but it made the quality of it not so great. And so, I mean, like in feedback, it was hard to give everyone quality feedback in that time. I had to do math, go over an hour 10 people, what would that feedback be? It was that kind of thing. So I honed it down to 10 people. And the course ran for 5 years. And it was magnificent. I really had a ball with it.
Mhm.
And the students that I met, they're still friends today. Wonderful community. And I'm sure someone will be watching in the chat there. And what happened was that 5 years on, I started getting better equipment and, built the studio onto the house and everything. And I thought, it's time now to just package that and put it up online for the thousands of people that never saw it. Because I think even in those 5 years, I did twice a year, 3 times a year sometimes. What was that, like 200 students? So only 200 students have seen this course, which took me a long time to build. I mean, it took forever to build it. And I was so proud of it. And it touched on everything. So this course, if you've seen my other courses, this course is almost like a grab bag of everything you would need to know in a sort of omnibus. And then from there you would go, I really like this. I'm going to go and do fantasy female figures. I like the renderer in this course. Or, I like the beginnings of this. I'll go and get the power of osmosis. I'm doing real Barnum Bailey salesmanship here, but that's what it and it became 14 hours of this stuff, distilled down from, I don't know how many hours, forever. So when you walk into a classroom, the teacher's blathering away, the students are kicking over their stools and stuff. You probably get started drawing an hour into the class sometimes if everyone's disruptive. But this doesn't have any of that. It's straight into the drawing. And all the pauses are taken out, but it's never sped up. This course is never sped up. So this one today, I'm going to voice over the voiceover. So the voiceover will be different in the, let's call it the classroom situation. But I'm going to voice over today so I can pause the video and take questions and carry on voicing over it. So just consider that I'm drawing. We've tried to draw here before, and it's been a disastrous thing, technically wise. So this is a much better way to do it, I think. So the subject today, trace or not trace. What's the benefit? Very little. What's the detriment? A lot.
Yeah, it gives you less. You have less space to then be able to invent, to be able to change and modify in a way that is informed by your own knowledge. You're locked into in that reference. So okay,
and
I like the idea here.
Yeah, and I think the biggest and the most destructive this can be to a person would be the beginner, if you trace, because you don't have the skills to embellish it, and so now you're locked into this thing where you're dependent on it. And if it was taken away from you, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't make a scratch. It would just be too scary. And then people have already seen what you can do with this maybe hidden idea. And usually it is. Norman Rockwell hid it from everyone. He built a cupboard and stuck his artoscope in there when visitors came around, because no one wants to hear that you traced it. They want it to be magic. And so I think it's the most detrimental to the beginner to trace, even though you can learn from tracing. Very, very little, I think, you can learn from tracing. But what you can learn from... Yeah, go on, Stephen.
The one that I think of as the person who wasn't necessarily tracing, but was working from reference and didn't talk about it, that I think of as the classic example is Frank Frazetta. Swore up and down that he didn't use any reference or anything, but... No, it's there. And if chances are at least a few of the people in the chat right now watching this live, thanks for being here, guys. They're fans of Frank Frazetta, and they think that maybe he worked entirely from imagination. And it's just not the case. It's a combination.
Look, Stephen, but did it make him a lesser artist? No, because he embellished so well. He embellished so well. And there's definitely, there was who was it? Was it William Stott? I don't want to cast names. It's not true, but it might have been. Oh, was it William Stott? Don't say it was William Stott if it wasn't. It was.
Putting you on the spot here. This is recorded, Patrick.
And no, it was a big name anyway. And they said he came in for Fire and Ice. It was James Gurney, I think. James Gurney was working on Fire and Ice, the Frazetta movie based on his drawings. And they were using Artoscope, which is basically a trace over photos, just exactly what we're talking about. So that whole movie's rotoscope. And if you don't know what rotoscope is, you just take every frame of the actual live action, you trace over it and make it, cartoonish. You make it better, more dynamic. And so someone said to Frank, can you do a little bit of draw over on the rotoscope here for us? And Frank went straight to that seat and sat down, and someone said, it wasn't his first rodeo. He was
he doesn't have to ask like, oh, what are the buttons here? How would I?
Why would I do this? What's the? He's been on a light box before. So, but yeah, he was such a pro. So there's the thing. It's you go into a professional studio, people are tracing. Now, not everyone. Yeah. Like Dave Palumbo, for instance, Julie Bell and Boris Vallejo's son. He draws. I've seen him draw using the grid method, which is basically a SOAR method of tracing. But you learn a lot more from it because you are actually getting into the idea of
you transfer and interpret.
Yeah, you're thinking about it more. You're seeing the spatial distances within the squares. You're really starting to understand it more. And the photorealists work like that too. They would grid it up and they would work in the squares to make sure the camera distortion wasn't too off. All of that stuff. So, look, everything's valid. Everything's valid. But if you can draw and you get under that light box, you're coming out of there pretty fast. If you can't, you're in there for hours and it's going to look like a dog's breakfast. And it'll continue like that. And we worked in a studio, a little studio system where there was lots of artists. And we had an artist that only learned from tracing. And when the art director sent back the drawing for amendments, it was just done. He was done. And they would have to, the art agent that we used was actually in the studio. And she would come over and say, Patrick, can you fix that up? And I'd be furious, to be honest, like as furious as I get, because I have a good temperament.
No, you're
but inside I'd be going,
all of rage. You can tell.
I'd be going, because, you know, I had my own work and I knew that he'd probably give me a proportion of this, but it would be a tiny little thing. And I'd usually say no to it. You know, I'd say, oh, don't worry about that. I nearly said his name. I says, don't worry about that. So I'd be working for free. And the art director thought this guy was fantastic. He just changed things on the fly. And when I changed the drawing, he'd have to get the models back in the pose. It was just a fortune going out the door. And it took forever. So learn to draw. And you can learn to change, you can change photographs. You can change, well, not photographic, you can change your drawing to look like nothing was Frankenstein. So you know how the muscles work. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, how to stylize as well, and how to make a drawing not look like a tracing. Because tracings look horrible anyway. When you start rendering them, you throw the trace away. It looks good if you're good at it. So anyway, I'm ready to get into it. Stephen, are there any questions to begin?
There are some questions. I think maybe we can tackle a couple.
Please do.
The one that I do want to put out here right at the start is that people are excited to have you here. Chad Estioko, a person who's here for plenty of our streams, said, I made coffee for this, and I'm a tea guy. So,
wow, that's
business.
That is big talk. There's no sleeping on this watch. Wow.
But yeah, so for those of you who are in the chat, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, whether that's about something that's happening in the moment during the demo that we'll be showing, or later on when Patrick is doing just the explicit Q&A portion, please put those into the chat right now, and I'll go ahead and stow them up for the right time. But in the meantime, Patrick, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Okay, well, let's get started. Okay, let's do it.
All right, we are in it.
So. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'll start that up for you. It's playing now, and then you should be able to scrub through it a little bit on that time.
Aha.
Take a
all right. So where do I can do that on this screen? Oh yes, gotcha. All right. So what we have on the screen at the moment. Yeah, thanks, Stephen. That works. Wonder if I can make that full screen so I can see it better. Let's try. I can. This is luxury. I've got my coffee too. Let me get this ready.
It means business.
So what you see here, the dangers of tracing without drawing mileage, is what we've just discussed. So on the top left there is a trace. This is what my tracings would look like. And this is Traceman U Masters Academy reference. You'll be able to find it, I'm sure, from that trace there. But look at the things that we should see automatically when we look at a photograph. What's wrong with it? Where's his head? Right? So that's a real trace. That's a trace straight off the photo. Where's his head gone? We know it's there. It's just above that right scapula. But it looks ridiculous, right? So that's the first thing an artist would amend. A professional artist would go, you can't just trace this thing. That's ridiculous. Look how long that leg is because of the photo distortion. All those kind of things. So for my kind of trace before a big painting or something, it would look like that. And that would be enough for me. There's just enough to get in. And that's probably what Frank Frazetta would do if he was doing a trace, something like that. But when you're beginning, and when I was beginning, I would trace that till it looked like a pencil photograph because I was so worried the art director would reject the drawing that I would keep going like that. And when they saw the drawing, they were so confident. And then I was stuck in that system where I had to give them this fantastic drawing every time so that they could approve it. And if they didn't, and it was a whole day fixing this thing back up again. So I soon learned to give them less. And then a quick change would be less. And before you know it, you can get the drawing approved within a couple of, within an hour maybe. And then you got all day to work on it. So that was what the other guy had a problem with because he was giving them too much. And then it was forever to start the drawing. So I'm going to start the drawing here. Now on the bottom left, this is from the course. Like I say, hardly anyone's seen this course. It's 14 hours plus, I don't know, it's a couple of minutes over 14 hours. Let's call it 14 hours.
Yeah.
Right? So it's 14 hours of distilled drawing. I'm going to work with the idea that there's a trace and now there's not a trace. So the idea on the right here is I'm going to draw as if the autograph never existed. And in a way, I wish it never did, because the expectations from what that started with, which was basically if Norman Rockwell, when he said the very words, when someone said, why would you trace when you're so good? He said, all the other fellows are doing it. And that's exactly what it was with me. That's exactly what it was. Everyone in the studio was doing it. They were making a fortune. I couldn't pay my rent. And I got my head under those curtains and my ass swung in the breeze like everybody else's. And I knew they were all watching me in there, all nodding. He's finally succumbed to the cult. And I had to come back up. The walk of shame with the drawing. And sure enough, I just got used to that. That was the professional way. And so off it went to the art director, got approved, and I could do whatever I had to do. Mm-hmm. So on the bottom left, as within this whole course, I'll put up anatomical drawings from my other courses and books and stuff like the Anatomy of Style. And I recommend if you have this course to get the book, the Anatomy of Style, the PDF as well. And it's with this course already comes quite a bit of reference. But if you wanted to bolster it further, you would get that little book. I think it's $20 on Proko.
Yeah, it's nice and inexpensive.
Yeah, it's a small thing for such a large amount, 25 years of knowledge in there. It took me forever to write that first book. It's like the first album. It took forever. Now was your second album. Oh, yeah. That's going to take quite a time. Now
you have a lifetime to make your first album and 2 years to make every album after that.
That's right. That's what it's like. Excuse me. I've got to...
No, do the thing you got to.
No, I'm still okay. I'll live through this. It'll be fine. Oh, the mic is so good, it would have blocked that out anyway. So yeah, so I'm going to start now. Please ask questions at any point and I'll pause it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk about this as if I'm drawing it. The voiceover on the course will be different.
Yeah,
but for today.
Yeah, so you were saying the top left one is an example of what a tracing would look like, and then the drawing here is going to be
PJ Artworks. So on the top left, sorry, do people know that I'm PJ Artworks?
They've got to.
No, it's Patrick Jones, unfiltered, right? But it's got to be remembered as well that the trace on the top left is how I did it.
Yeah.
And in the older days, it would have been almost finished. It would have been like, and they're harder, by the way. The more you embellish it in the trace, the harder it is to draw from, because it's such a muddle. You go, how in the hell do I start this again? So from there, I can really work on it. So I'm going to start the drawing. Please ask questions at any point. All right. So what I'm doing here, let's see if I can play it. Right. So I've got myself a little pencil, because it's a small drawing, I'm using a pencil. If it was a bigger drawing, I'd use a piece of charcoal. So I'm putting in the big shapes first. The pencil, if you're going to ask, is a general's pencil. It's a soft one. They break very easily, but I love that pencil. Now, it may be hard to see on the screen what's happening there, but basically I'm putting in as light as I can all of the big shapes that I need for this drawing. And my first tip would be draw as light as you can. Because once you put a dark line down, it becomes so indelible that you're almost fixated on it. Whereas it's really light, then you have the chance to do a bit of pentimento, which is many lines on top that are getting more and darker the more you believe they're the right line. So you've got 20 goes at it if you want to. And also you've got that rhythm. You can see the rhythm of this. Now I use the broad of the pencil there to get the diagonal of the shoulder. So there's my first change on the trace. Do you see that? So if you look on the trace, it's quite square at the top, but I've decided it needs a little bit more dynamic. So asymmetry for me is a big key to making your work flow. So I've slanted that shoulder just a touch there. And now I'm feeling the barrel of the chest. Now I'm just going to pause it for a second to show you just how much is done in that very brief time. None of my movies are ever sped up. A very brief time. So when you see professional artists draw, they seem to be drawing fast. But if you look closer, they're not drawing that fast. They're just making the decisions that take them to the next decision quicker than you would when you're just beginning. Mm-hmm. And it's a short time, but the drawing's not that fast. It's just quick decision making over millennia because you've done this so many times with many drawings. And this course is all about that. It's all about many small drawings before we get to this drawing. So this is part 6 of week 1. And with week 1, we start with the standing figure as you would. And I've already done this in my other courses. So the standing figure in this is a little bit more fleshy. So this is a good beginner to intermediate course, and even advanced if you have skipped the fundamentals, which so many professional artists did. And a lot of professional artists came to our studio with no fundamentals, and they were straight in the light box. And that's all they could do. If that light box disappeared, they'd be
screwed.
They'd be totally. It's America, so I don't know what's offensive. Screwed's fine.
Screwed is fine. Yeah.
Totally screwed. Totally screwed in the dust with your little tin can and eye patch. So basically, you need to be able to draw for both reasons. Mm-hmm. So, and also for the main reason for me is that it depressed me. And when I started drawing cartoons just to get out of that whole world, it was such a relief to no longer rely on something. I could sit under a tree with the birds chirping and draw, which was my dream. That's when I walked into that studio with that dream. And the reason I was hired in that studio was for cartoons anyway. It was a green card studio. So I was hired in there, but it also brought in, because they were all pros, advertising work and all kinds of things come into that studio. So what we have here is the bare bones of it. And I'm going to play the recording again. Please ask questions at any point. I thrive on questions.
We have a couple.
Yes, go ahead.
A couple in here if you want them.
Yeah, because this movie will be an hour. So we've got, an hour and a half.
Got all the time in the world.
Yeah. Okay. So go ahead with the question.
I was actually typing out an answer, but this is great. You addressed it a little bit, but Jillian Cole was asking, is this course a new course or is this the previous course with new narration?
It's the previous course. So anyone that's done this course, let's say there was 200 students in it. I have already sent them all the movies anyway, as a thank you. So they don't need to buy the course. So everyone that came into the course originally was quite an expensive course. It had to be, for how few people were in it, how long it took to make, and how much time I had to spend with the students every week. Because it wasn't just the 14 hours of the course. I would meet them for 3 hours or 4. I always said 3, and then we'd be there for 4 and 5 hours on a Sunday morning. So it was a lot of work. So this course, if you've taken it already, that's the same course. The voiceovers are the same. I've cleaned up a few of them because the audio on those original movies wasn't that great, but they've been cleaned up and bettered now. All right, so I'll go back in, Stephen. I hope that answered the question.
I have one other one here that I think this is
go ahead.
To get in here at the start. So John Doe, a person who's also here on our streams pretty often, asked, who, in Patrick's opinion, is the ideal student for the Anatomy of Style course? Does it have any new or updated ideas from the book? And I think those are kind of two separate questions. So
yeah,
the first one that I'd love to tackle is the idea of who is the ideal student. Is it someone who is much earlier in their career, someone who's already learned some anatomy, or can they come in and mostly learn from some of your landmarks and other mnemonic devices that you have without having any intense anatomy knowledge?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's why I recommended having the book. So let's take the book, because the second question is the same as, well, it fills in the first question as well, is that the book itself is, even though it has demonstrations in it, is pretty much an article that lives alone. Whereas this course, if you've already read the book, this course, because I don't want everything to be the same thing. This course is massively different from the book. It's not, for instance, there's no drawings in the book that are in the course, for instance. And that's always the way I like to play it. Nothing should be that. So if you have the book, I mean, this is the perfect course for you. If you like the book and the book was beneficial, jump in. It's another launch pad from what you've already done in that book. And that's why I fleshed the figures out a little bit more in the stand-in figures to make it more interesting for anyone else and also for me too. So I didn't just want to just take the stand-in figures in the book and just lump them on the screen.
Yeah.
I wanted to draw it right away from the get-go, freehand. Everything's freehand. There's nothing traced. Everything's in real time. So the perfect student is anyone that's curious. The perfect student could be a beginner. I mean, I was a beginner and I went and picked Michelangelo's books off the shelf. And sure, a lot of it went over my head, but jumping in the deep end made me ask a lot of questions. And so this course, as with other courses, was built for the young me, the beginner me that went, I've got so many questions I want to ask Michelangelo, and he's not bloody here. And he's not telling me his thoughts because these books were written after the fact. All I had was the drawings. And so I was looking for books that constantly explained every mark, why they were doing it, what was the reason for it, why this mark and not that mark, why even the broad of the pencil instead of the tip. And for me, that's the benefit of this course, is that all of that stuff is described. Every microcosm of every move that I make. It's sometimes when the instructor's drawing, the best stuff is in the silence of it. And so I'm very aware that when I'm doing the best stuff that I speak and tell you why I'm doing this. And that was always lost from me. I went, why doesn't he speak? He's doing his, because he was so caught in the moment, this instructor, whoever it was, they forgot to speak. And that's why I basically record the whole thing and then speak over it. So because I mean, I've been doing it forever. I know exactly what I was thinking for every single mark. And I remember saying to a student once, the reason for this painting, why the artist did this and did that and did this and did that are, and a student says, how can you possibly know what he was thinking? And I went, well, why else would that mark be there? You know, because every artist is not just, you know, daubing around and going, oh, I got another lucky punch, another lucky punch. Yeah, so it was that kind of, yeah, you can see it. Of course he did it for that. Why Lost Edge? Did his ink run out? Obviously, he's got plenty of ink. He left it out deliberately. So it's that kind of thing. So why Lost Edge? Why a hard mark? Where do you begin with style? I mean, the whole thing's the anatomy of style. And I think the word anatomy puts people off, and it would have put me off. And so for me, the anatomy isn't that dusty old thick tome that you pull off the shelf and don't take the rest of your life. I go straight into it with shapes, just basically mnemonical shapes. You know, the scapula is a triangle. It couldn't be easier than that. Now, the scapula is not a triangle, but it's basically a triangle. And so I go straight in with a triangle. Why would you bother with anything else? Get straight in and draw. If you wait till you've got all the skills, you may as well be on your deathbed with a pipe and say, right, I'm ready to go. So get drawing right away. And that's the whole idea of this course. Let's just get straight into the drawing, and I'll show you how. And the great thing is you can rewind the teacher. Let's say you're 20 minutes and you go, boy, this is more than I expected. You go back to the first again and do those 20 minutes again. And you'll be surprised how much you did learn, even though you thought you didn't. How much? I'm sorry, guys. Look, I am like a southern dame here. I know you guys are in the winter. Look at Stephen with his beanie. We are in a heat wave here. I am dying.
No, I don't want to put some great downturn in temps right now, so I'm enjoying it.
Because I love the cold. I love it.
Me too.
I'm tempted to put this on, but I don't want to destroy the audio. So I'm suffering on your behalf. There you go.
We all thank you. So here in the chat, we did get a little hello from Rembert Montalde. He says he's tuning in from work, listening because he's a huge fan.
Oh, thanks. I know that name. That man's around a lot. He's the man. He's the man on the platform.
I've got a print up on my wall over here.
Yeah.
Him recently. Thanks for
that's nice. There's no gift like a gift of art. You see a smile. If we did it just for that, you know, you see the smile on people's faces. Except for my uncle. I remember I drew my uncle once. He says it doesn't look like me.
He's like, well, it's not my fault. It's fat. You think he looks fat, but it's because you're fat.
Well, I did it in about 3 seconds, like this, and there was even a breadcrumb fell on it. I says, "There you go. It's all the essence of it." Because when you don't know about art, you want photorealism, and then when you know about art, you want less of that. Usually, anyway, photorealism's fine. I mean, I love a lot of photorealism, but only when it has the artist's style on it. If you can't tell one from the other, like I know a Chuck Close when I see it, and he's a photorealist. And then I know another photorealist and another photorealist because their styles are there. Mm-hmm. There's a guy, Nick here in Australia. You can tell his art right away. It's the color choices, you got to make choices. But I'll get back into this. Let's have a look. And so the broad strokes, think of it like this if you're learning how to get a style going or you want to know how to style work. Like on the bottom left there, that's a demonstration. It's very bold. Everything in there is bold because it's for clarity. But when we're talking about art, I'm saying a broad shape gets a broad mark. So a big back gets a big broad mark. If you think just very simply like that, if I want a thin line, where would I put it? We'll put it on a bone. There's not much on there, is there? Put it on the shin. Then you get a thin line. Now you've got these big broad lines that seem to be landing somewhere specifically. And these thin lines land somewhere specifically. And you go, wow, this is looking very stylish. And it's just two thoughts, two very simple thoughts. And then you throw it all up in the air and let anything you want happen. But you've got at least those two basic starts. So there's the broads. So I'm getting in. Now, what you don't normally see is I'm doing a relationship here, by the way. I'm throwing the relationship between the elbow to the other elbow. See that? So I want to know what the other side's doing all the time. And for big drawings like this, I usually throw a big, what I call the mermaid's net around it. I'll throw a big gloop around to where I believe all those shapes are going to land. For this one, I went straight into it because there are no rules. Now, there's the head going up. That's the first thing I saw. What's wrong with this photo? You don't have the photo here, but what's wrong with that trace up there? And same with this leg, too long. So these are the things that I'm correcting. And if you were working with the autograph, you probably won't correct them because you don't know how. So yeah, I'm thinking about
that to say that you think that a point of interest in this pose would be having a greater indication of the head rather than what could look like just another slight little amount of flesh on top of the shoulder there.
You decapitate it.
Yeah.
Could be that. But as you can see here, that my usual method as well is a gestural flow from one side to the other in a diagonal. So I'm doing this all the time. When I'm drawing one side, I want to know what the other side's doing. Automatically, I want to know what is that side doing. So you saw there as I was doing the barrel of the chest on the left, I went straight over to the other side to do the barrel of the chest on the right. So I need to know how one side relates to the other. And that tells me what three-dimensional objects are doing, rather than a two-dimensional trace, which is what a trace is. You're just dimensionally going down a page without understanding what the whole thing looks like. You're going from one line to another. You're not going from one side to the other. So if you are tracing, you could do that. You can go from one side to the other to feel that flow, but you probably get depressed by it because you go, I don't know why I'm doing this. There seems no reason for it when the trace is right there. But there's a huge reason for it. And that's to find the rhythm and the gesture of all these structures. When you're tracing, it's all structure, because that's all it is. It's just structural things that you're putting down. When you're drawing properly, you're thinking of the holistic nature of it. And that's what I'm thinking here. And also, here's where the anatomy comes in. Let's say we had that trace on the left. Now, that arm that I've traced there, basically that's what photos are like. You accept them, because all of that mishmash of grays is in there, of colors in there. And you just accept it. You go, oh, I get the idea. But when you trace it and look at it, those lines don't make much sense. What the hell is that? Well, I know that it's a tendon of the triceps. I know mostly the whole back of the arm is going to be triceps, and they're all going to come down to that ulna bone. So I've done that many times with small drawings, which is what this course is full of, small drawings. And so I was able to extrapolate what was vague on the trace very quickly based on understanding the anatomy. And that's why that drawing in the bottom left is in there, to show you what is very clear in your mind once you learn this stuff, and what's very vague in photographs is going to remain vague. So that's the help there. So in this course, you would look to the bottom left there, to see maybe more clarity in what I'm doing on the right. If you get a little lost, and of course you can always stop it. And then there's the ribs. What do? They're so strange at the back. You know, they come up really quickly curved at the front, but at the back they're these big long things. How much do we put in? How much do we take out? Now, before I go any further, look at these marks. Look where I'm putting the darks. Look where I'm putting the lights. I'm going to pause it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you do see my cursor, Stephen. Tell me if you do.
No, we cannot.
See the cursor? Okay, well, I'll just play it a little bit more so we can see it. So if you look on the right there, where the rib cage is going around the corner, the right of the screen, that is, you can see that there's a heavy line there. And there's also broad lines too. So the broad of the tonal bottom of the pencil. So as I lean the pencil lower down onto the page, I'm using the entire length of it. That's why you sharpen your pencil to a longer lead. And that's giving me a light tone. So when I put the pencil down onto its flat, I put it down lighter because I know that's going to be a tone. And when I lift it up a little bit, I put a little bit more weight on it. But the weight is so little. My first call to everybody that comes into my classes is whatever weight you're putting on the pencil, reduce it by 50% because you're going to be very heavy when you start. And then you'll be amazed, especially with charcoal pencils on newsprint, just how dark you can get it dark very quickly with not much weight. In fact, with a layer effect, doing a second line on top. So you can see that all the pentimento, which is basically lots of lines laid down, and then you pick one, you pick your best one, has come into its own now. So I've picked a line for that rib cage, but I've embellished it now to be a better rib cage. So the trace we have on the left is already showing just how weak it is as a method. It's incredibly weak because it tells you nothing about style. Yeah. You're going to have to do it yourself. So you can see that the scapula on the left, you can see that hump, the curve of it. Now, what do I want that curve to look like? In the trace, it was quite flat. But if it's a lump, I feel it should be a curve. So I've curved it a little bit more. I want a curve and then a straight and then a curve. That's the kind of thing I want. I want that rhythm. If everything's a straight followed by a straight, it's going to look like blocks. If everything's a curve followed by a curve, it's going to look like jello. And so if I mix and match them to my own stylistic preferences, it's still going to look like a scapula, but it's going to look like a really beautiful scapula because it's going to have gesture and structure in it, which is missing in the trace already. So the trace, the two scapula, if you don't know what scapula are, they're basically your shoulder bones at the back. When you were a kid, you always flexed, and that's all you had. You had no muscle yet, but you could flex your scapula. So those two big wing bones. From this view, very, very different. They're no longer really a triangle. They're
moving more towards that flat, like almost like a horizontal alignment there.
That's right. And the scapula are basically the machine of the back. They can go around the corner. They can come back again. They can, because they're buffered. They're actually not attached like the others. They're actually buffered with serratus muscles. So they're attaching like fingers onto the rib cage, whereas the other muscles are really going straight onto the rib cage, and they're very solid. So the scapula is not a strong thing. It's a mobile thing. And so that's why the arms and the chest muscles are really doing all the heavy lifting, because they are really anchored onto that rib cage. And you can call that the ballet of the back, really, the scapula. They're moving the arms back and forth and up, and they're independent of each other as well. So, that's a whole lifetime of learning. Yeah. But in this course, it's just a triangle to begin with, and then we can understand that more fully as we go along.
There was one comment here. I don't know where that one was. I was trying to go back and find it. But they were saying something to the effect of, like, there's no way, no way did he just pull a figure out of those soft pencil marks. Yeah, I love seeing them come together. See, you were focusing on that sharp edge that you laid in there. What have we got coming up next? What shapes are you going to pull out of here? Well, usually
I'm glad you asked that question, Stephen, because sometimes I lose the thread of thought because I get so excited in the drawing of it. And you start going, oh, everyone knows this. They don't, So for me, it's big to small. In fact, I have a mantra. If you break any of these, because I hesitate to say rules, but basically these methods. So I have big to small, long, light, and loose, and simple to complex. Now, if you switch any of those, let's say simple to complex. So simple shape is the scapula, is a triangle. If I go complex to simple and start rendering a scapula with all its gnarly pieces, it's going to be a disaster. And then I've got to go and do it all again on the next scapula. And before I know it, I don't want to draw anymore because it's so depressing. Whereas if I keep it simple, 2 triangles, I'll come back to that later and add more to it. And I'll come back to that later and add more to it because I'm doing the big things first. So if I go big to small, a big egg for the rib cage, and then I start putting the scapulas on top as triangles, anyone can do that, an egg and 2 triangles. And then I have that method, big to small, simple to complex. So a big rib cage, 2 small, simple triangles on top of that, and on and on. So if I go small to big and start with an eye, it's going to be a disastrous portrait. I mean, some people do it as a trick in Trafalgar Square or Leicester Square in London, and it's magnificent, but it's a one-trick pony thing. So if you say, well, let's say pony, if you said to them, draw me a pony, it would be the end of their career because they've only got that one thing, which they're magnificent at, by the way, one thing where they learn to just map out a nose down to your mouth and things like that. So that's called automatic drawing, which is, it's wonderful too. It really is. But it doesn't teach you how to draw because you always need reference. You always need it because you're mapping what's in front of you. You're basically drawing the air in front of you, which is lovely. That's why art is such a tricky thing to get to, not so much teach, but you have to hesitate so many times and say there's no rules to this. But methods are very important. If you have a method like the one I just described there, big to small, simple to complex, long, light, and loose, do the longest lines first. And so you saw me do all these long lines and big shapes and start putting them in. So this is the part now where you go back into it and you go, okay, so we've done the big stuff. We've done the small stuff. Now let's go back in again and start working on the big stuff again for the broad pencil. So I'm going in, and the first big thing I do is the big rib cage because that was the biggest thing. So I go in there and start doing the broad shapes within that. And it's easier now. So,
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you've got that rough shape in there. And then now here in this video, you're going to start extracting some of those harder edges to reinforce the greater mass that you had laid in. So it looks like you're moving into, you did a little bit of the arm. And what have we got now?
Okay, what have we got there? If we're talking about anatomy. So what we had on the trace, let's say you've traced it and you don't have the entire scapula in there. Because we know how to draw, we can put the scapula in. And I know at the bottom of that scapula, there's a muscle called the teres major. And there it is right there. And that stops the arm looking like it's stuck onto something because it's actually being inserted around from the back to the front. Now, that's a lot of chat, right? But basically, it's, I can't show it as a, but if you look at the little demonstration or the little thing in the bottom left there, you can actually see I've written the teres major down there. And it's in there. So it's a little muscle, but it bulges when you pull the arm back. There's so much to learn in this course, but over 14 hours, you'll get it. This is an accumulation of 6 lessons. So at the end of every week 1, for instance, we do a render. Week 2, we do a render at the end. So this is the render part of it because I wanted to show the joy of drawing. And this is the joy of it. This is after how many hours we had in week 1. Time to relax and draw the way people always wanted to draw, which is like magic, right? You go, oh, that's wonderful. But as I go along, I'll describe why is that a thin line? Why is that a hard line on that knee? Because there's bones in there. And so there's your style. Why is there a lost line just above that shape I just made there? Right? Now I filled it in. I think it probably could have been better with a lost line. But if you don't want to do a lost line and you want to show the tendon a little bit more, then put a very thin line. And to the mind's eye, that feels like a lost line. That feels like the sun is really burnt into that shape. So this is all about style at this point. So we put in the broad stuff. We put in the shapes. I can really go in there. And you saw the rhythm there as I move my way down that tendon. So that's drawing with rhythm. I want to feel the rhythm. One side to the other is another one of my mantras. So if you break any one of those things and your drawing is going off the rails, and you have that maybe written down as a little list, which I do in the course, I'm pretty sure, then you could say to yourself, it's not a rule, but you could say to yourself, oh, I get it. I went complex to simple. I broke one of those little rhythms that are so successful when they're not broken. So you could always go to that and say, this drawing's falling apart. am I doing small to big? And that could well be the reason. Usually that's why it falls apart. Is because you've lost the method that got you that rhythm, and hesitate again with method, because methods are meant to be broken. I see students trying to wedge a method into a figure drawing, like an 8 heads high, for instance, when the model in front of them isn't 8 heads high. So they try and wedge it in there. It becomes this ridiculous looking thing. And then characters in your work. Everything is basically the same character. It's all these superhuman people. So you need to be able to draw lots of different kinds of characters.
Oh, great. There actually is a question in here from a person talking something about that. So we had a question from Tropics Shots, I think was the one. Yeah. They said, "Hello, Patrick. I'm an artist aspiring to become a professional. I'm currently studying anatomy. Do you have any tips?" Oh, I'm sorry. This is the wrong question.
Is it? It sounds like a good question to me.
Well, yeah, no, this is just not the question I was reaching for. But they were asking, do you have any tips on what I should study and how I should practice? But if you want to answer that one, I'll go and find the question that I was looking for.
Yeah. Well, look, it sounds like narcissism when I say just do what I do, because I have distilled all this into what I would have done if I was starting out. And that's the very reason I wrote that first book. I wrote The Anatomy of Style not to publish it. I wrote it for me. I said, look, here's, because I was teaching at this point, and I thought I really need to not make these mistakes over and over, because you do forget stuff. An anatomy teacher once said, anatomy is the first thing you learn and the first thing you forget. So that was the point for me. I went, these shapes that are so helpful to me can easily be lost, especially if you start doing drawings where you only do your best 5 poses kind of thing, and you see that all the time. You see artists doing their best 5 poses and they become hacks. Like, as much as I love John Buscema, I see every once in a while he's basically done that pose because it's a good pose, and he's done it 6 times. There was a fight scene once where Conan was fighting this other guy, and I couldn't tell who was Conan and who was the other guy, because he loved the look of Conan so much. The other guy looked just like Conan. I thought, who won that fight? Because they were both strangling each other at that point. So there becomes that when you're doing your greatest hits. So learning like this means you don't do your greatest hits. So I made that book for me so that when I went into class and maybe I had a foggy moment, I'd just go, oh yeah, oh, that's it. That's what's wrong with this drawing. So I did it for the students, and I would put the study sheets, which are in the books. They're basically sheets like the bottom left of that Anatomy of Style drawing that I'm doing, would be those sheets. And so what I found by teaching the students, because they taught me to be a better teacher, is that was gold to them. And at the end of every class, they go up to the whiteboard and they would photograph every single study sheet. And I went, okay, that's really interesting. That's what they really learned from. And it made perfect sense, because they can't keep what I've taught them in their head, even though I said just any 5 things you've learned today, which was beneficial, because I know you can't hold all that stuff. So each week the students would learn, and they go, here's the 5 things I learned. And I went, okay, build on those. And so I'd go around the class and I'd see the improvement so fast. And I went, wow, there's really something in this. Even though I've learned from other teachers, I'm not saying that I created this incredible thing, but I really grew it in my way. And it became so successful because it was basically like I had how they do in marketing. They go, send that out and see what's successful about it, and then come back to me. I was doing this with every student. I was walking around, okay, this student needs this. And so by the end of those classes I taught in university, I went, boy, I really learned how to teach here. I really learned how to teach people how to learn for themselves. And I put it all in the book. And so everything that I was learning that was beneficial for the students, I put in the book for me as well. And so at the end of it, I had this book, and I went, well, that's a book now.
Might as well share it with people.
It was originally supposed to be just study sheets, and it became a book. So go ahead, Stephen. You had a question, I think.
No, I would say I think that's how a lot of the best art books that I've seen of the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years, if not longer, a lot of those come from that kind of process. I did also find that other question, by the way.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. So the other question was from Chetistioko, which, let me know, you're here all the time. Am I saying that right? They said, Patrick, do you have any tips on how I can draw body types consistently? I'm drawing a comic and my character's body fat percentage and proportions vary depending on my references.
Yes, I do have a method for that. So very deep in the Proko courses, there's a little course that was called Anatomy of Style to begin with, but it was basically just encompassing what I teach in my classes. But it was all about drawing for animation. So I had an animation course I taught here, and I had a whole, and it was just basically the same thing as the anatomy book. I was teaching all this stuff. I still haven't done a book on drawing for animation. Maybe I should. But I ended up doing these movies, these series of movies, and they're all on Proko. So if you look deep down there, I think it's the Anatomy of Style animation. It was just rechanged a little bit. That's why I'm vague on it. John rechanged it so it wasn't confusing with this one. Yeah. And we both agreed that they had to be separated a little bit, even though they encompass the same idea that if you learn your anatomy, you can draw anything. And when it comes to animation, they really need to know their anatomy because they're boiling it right down to the simplest thing. So in there's a course where I create a whole cast of characters based on an idea, and then I grow that idea. And I taught this in class. I would put a list on of occupations and a list on of genres, and I'd say mix them up. I'd say accountant, and over on the other side you could pick from a vampire or a pirate. And you go, a vampire accountant, that's interesting. And so now we've got a character. What would they look like? Little tiny glasses and fangs. And it was so easy to create a whole world like that. And so I create a world of characters within the genre of Western vampires. So we had two things together. And I create that whole character cast as a standing study sheet with all the little characters all different. And they maintain those differences. Now, it's not new to anyone to know that turnarounds are going to help you do that. But the way I build those little characters out of potato shapes and stuff is that you know that this guy here, little Ludwig, is always started with this potato shape. And he's always got these little dangly arms. Whatever it is, you always have that. And so you've created a character, you've done a turnaround, and you have that now. And it's classic Disney. You stick that on your wall, that's Ludwig. And Ludwig will always have that starting point of his little potato body. So that's the way to do it. You know, create a character, really understand it in 3 dimensions. Yep.
Yeah, drawing the character, I think the character sheet idea and then like expression sheet and everything, I think is a really, really important exercise because it has you drawing the characters in ways that you didn't naturally. Kind of like what you said about the John Buscema thing, where it's that you are forced to look at this one thing and try to do them differently, and it makes you look at the challenges. And if they were to just sit there and look at the characters, the 40 different Conans with slightly different equipment layouts, they'd think, you know what, maybe I need some more variation than this, you know?
Yeah.
Some things like that. I also, you said a
Yeah.
Dracula that's an accountant, and all I can think, I put it in the chat here, I put account Dracula.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. I need you in the class because when I teach the classes, everyone comes in and I can see all their cast of characters. You know, a lot of them are built on those characters. So I have the students all draw each other with blind, you know, like blind sight. What's it called? Blind contour drawing. And so they say, I can't think of a character. I said, look around the room. Every character on earth is in the class. And sure enough, you know, especially teenagers, because they're still growing and stuff. So they're all different gangly shapes and stuff. And they have a ball with they're laughing their heads off. So they come in a bit quiet. And then all of a sudden you can't shut them up. I said, can you just keep it down a little bit, guys? Because, you know, that's what happens when art becomes a community. It becomes this thing where finally we're in a place where you don't feel intimidated. And they would come up and they would sit. I would create a big desk where anyone who has ideas come up in your group and show me your ideas. And it was the funnest time. It really was for me to teach that stuff. But yeah, that's what you want to do. The turnarounds are the most important thing, I think. And when you do the expression sheets, which is also in that little course, what happens then is you lose the fear that you might have had. Like, for instance, you're saying, how do I keep it consistent? You've got that fear. You go, I don't think I can keep this consistence, right? By just asking that question. So once you've done your turnarounds, once you've done your expressions, you can't stop. You go, I I can't wait to put this character into a scene. I can't wait to, because I know exactly how they feel. I know the emotions of this character. I know what they look like when they're sad, happy, grumpy, all of that stuff. And there's a little drawing in that course where I have one of my favorite little characters. She's only done like 2-3 seconds, not really, but let's say a minute or so. And it's based on my sister, Donna. And Donna really took no prisoners, you know? And I remember her face. If you were in trouble with my sister and she pulled that face, there was no getting out of that room alive. And I thought, that's the face. And I just stuck it on that character. So I had a character that didn't look like her, but I put the expression of her on that character. And I just went, wow, that's her.
That's her.
So you learn, it's her. That's her. She knows now. This is the first time. Hey, Donna.
We have some other questions, but I do want to point out, so here we are 55 minutes into the stream. We haven't done much with the video. So I think let's dig in on that one for the people in the chat who were asking questions. I do have, I think, all of those stored up here, but I'm going to focus on us getting through the demonstration here so we can just get to see a little bit more of that stuff. Okay,
I'll answer the questions as I go. Okay, and the drawing gets done pretty quick from this point. And that's the great thing about it. Yeah, is look how much it took pretty little time. I mean, the whole drawing takes 50 minutes or something like that. Like I said, it's in real time. But look how by putting down the basics, the fundamentals, that's why I'm saying this course could be really for even professional people that never did the fundamentals. Let's be honest, there's many of them out there. And they're always living, not a lie, but this fear that they missed something. Why is every drawing so hard when I'm a professional 20 years? Because the fundamentals were either forgotten or were never learned. But look how I don't need that thing in the left anymore. That no longer exists in my mind. Not much anyway, because the basic shapes are in. In fact, it's a hindrance, because another big thing with professionals is they don't copy. They extrapolate, they embellish. So I put a hard broad on that ulna. Did you see that? And now I'm bringing that bicep in. And that's when the anatomy really comes into it. So that thing on the top left is so complicated compared to what's on the right here, even though this is much more expressive. And to the untrained eye, magic, right? It's absolute magic. It would have been to me. How the hell, why did you make that mark when you didn't know anything about anatomy? I'd go, what is that? What is that lump? It looks so real. And it went in a second. It's from learning all this as a simple method rather than a difficult method, which can burn people out. Yes. So I'm going to end here now. Basically, there's a point where you throw the reference away in your mind anyway, and this is that point. So I'm going, what do I know about all this stuff? You know, where does it need a hard edge? Look how close I'm getting to the end of that pencil. Do you see that? My fingers are further up that pencil than they were before. That's microscopic learning right there, because I'm doing smaller shapes. So I've gone up close. And so for me, up close to the end of the pencil is for small, and down further the pencil is for big. That alone, the pencil itself, how to wield it, will give you incredible results. How to hold it, like I'm doing here with the gestural hand. I mean, I don't think I've gone into the detail hand once here, because you really don't need to. You can get into the detail by just going. I'm almost on the pencil itself, on the actual charcoal there. Do you see that? For the small stuff. Mm-hmm. And a question that maybe is in somebody's mind is, why is there no smudging on the paper here? Has it been fixed? I never fix it. What happens after a while? Your hand becomes as light as a feather, and you barely make a mark. I mean, my hand will have darkness on it. I'll show it to my students all the time. I'll go, here's what you should have in your hand right now. If there's no darkness on these knuckles, then you haven't gone down low enough. Your hand tells you what your history is in your hand, what you just did. And so I'm going down for, when it comes to detail like that, I push down on the knuckles to bring the pencil up to get a point on it. And so at this point here, I'm still going big to small, left to right. I'm still going, where are these big relationships from one side to the other? And you can already see now, I don't know what this is, 30 minutes in or 25 minutes in. You can already see now that this is a whole different beast than that thing on the left, top left. It's a whole different beast. Mm-hmm. It's probably shares a relationship with the diagram on the bottom left now than the top left, because the bottom left is the years of experience. Mm-hmm. So even if you took, and that's what my course, The Power of Osmosis, is all about, is if you just even copied what I did while I do it and just hear those thoughts, you're actually imbibing the thoughts and the method at the same time. So even if it's too much to grasp all of the anatomy, which it will be anyway, so just accept that. It's all part of the process. You will, by osmosis, which is imbibing the whole thing, by doing the motor memory of actually doing things, is a whole separate thing than up here. The motor memory is very important. So draw lots and lots. That's what Michelangelo's advice was to Antonio. Draw, Antonio, draw, and don't stop. That's all he gave that poor student after all that working for him for free. Now, all these arrows here from the course where I'm actually going way into depth and saying, here's what the relates to. Yep. So there's, like, for instance, there's the latissimus attaching to the spine at the back of the hips. So those arrows are pointing to the drawing and then to the diagram to let you know what's going on there. Because this is, like I said, it's the magic of it. And some of it might be vague to the beginner. And I'm just making little points there of where that tendon would attach to that ulnar bone. So I'm thinking sharp. You can think like that. Where do I put these sharp lines? Well, what's sharp? A bone's sharp. Your elbow's pretty sharp, isn't it? Look at it, even on my sleeve there, it pops right on. And so that's a hinge that's happening there. And the more it's hinged, which is here, the sharper it's going to look on the figure. Now I'm very close.
You want to emphasize those things with the pencil marks as well. If you had a soft mark with the pencil, that implies something that doesn't have as much of a hard edge, so much as more like an edge that is curving. Yeah.
If this was a female figure, there'd be less of those hard edges. So I think of a broad picture. So I think of the female figure as rolling landscapes. And I think of the male figure as a rocky desert. And so if I have that just in my mind, I go, it's a rocky, look at that chin, look at that jaw, look at these bones, look at all this, what's going on here, So that's a rocky landscape. Where on a woman, it's the subcutaneous layer thicker, so it's harder to see all those landscapes. You'll still see them in the bones, but you're not going to see them as, look at that fist, like Frank Frazetta says, if he draws a fist, he wants it to look like the rockiest, maddest, scariest thing that's ever been seen coming at you. That's a Frank Frazetta fist. So he was already, that's why we go back to him so much. He never taught, and yet you can self-learn from Frazetta. Well, you can self-learn Frazetta via me. I was doing a podcast with Sarah Frazetta, and I was describing what I feel Frank was doing when he was painting the Egyptian queen. And she was learning from me about what her grandfather must have been thinking, because Sarah is an artist as well. But, I've been in the game a long time, and I've studied Frank Frazetta. I probably looked at his paintings longer than it took him to paint them, studied all over them. So I really feel that I know how he worked and why he did what he did. So I was describing that all to her. That's on my YouTube channel if you want to see it, where I break down the Egyptian queen. So yeah, for that reason alone, the course will teach you how to draw the difference between a male figure and a female figure in a stylish way. How do we do that? What would make that happen? Like I said, it's just dirty marks on paper. But the magic of it is,
I like that's the Patrick Jones autobiography. Dirty marks on paper.
Dirty marks on paper. It's a good one, isn't it? I like that. Thanks, Stephen. I'm gonna steal that. Dirty marks on paper. I was gonna call my autobiography Brian Blessed Called Me Darling. I don't know if you know. Do you know Brian Blessed? Maybe we talked about him before. He was the guy that was the eagle guy in Flash Gordon movie, the big guy with the barrel chest and the wings.
I see.
I used to answer the phone in Pinewood Studios when I worked in the movies, and the agent Brian Blessed said, "Can you answer the phone, Patrick, when I'm out?" It's just 20 years old, and Brian Blessed would ring up. He says, "Patrick, darling, oh, that big man with a barrel chest that scared the life out of Flash Gordon. Brian Blessed Called Me Darling," and I never forgot it. I thought that's a good title right there.
Yeah,
but yeah, I like that one too. Dirty marks on paper.
Like Patrick Jones, blessed artist.
What was that one, Stephen? Let's hear it again.
Patrick Jones, blessed artist.
Blessed artist, yeah. That's what you got to do as well. You got to throw down a whole lot of stuff. What did they used to say? Throw it on the wall and see what sticks.
Throw spaghetti at a wall, see what sticks. Yeah.
See what sticks. Now look what's happening here. Do you see this? This is danger time, because with just a few strokes of my finger there, I blended that just enough to leave the wonder of the marks underneath. Now, that can be seductive. And you go, wow, that really made a big difference. And what? 30 seconds. I'm going to get my finger out and I'm going to blend this to high heaven, and it'll be magic. And then once you get into that seduction, it becomes vaguer and vaguer, and then you've got this woolly drawing. So you got to get straight back in there and make it look like a drawing again. So look at those beautiful lines, and think of this as a focus of a camera. So if you think about cinema, there's different kinds of cinema. There's spherical lenses and wide deep focus where everything's sharp, right? And then you've got anamorphic lenses where everything falls off at the edges. You know, think of Alien. It softens at the edges like a painting. And so I'm turning the world on its head here. I'm not so much softening the edges here. I am near the bottom left and around the figure, but I'm putting less detail, which is kind of the same idea. So I want to really express the power of that bicep of the leg, or the rectus femoris of the leg there, and the bicep at the back. I really want to show the power of those, and I want to do it with just a line, because if I render it the same as I render the top, then your focus is everywhere. You're going down here, you're going up there. You've got out of the idea of that it's a drawing and that you're an artist and you're composing a picture where you want people to look, where you believe is the most important thing. And for me, the most important thing here is the story of this pose, the story of the anguish, the defeat, whatever you want to put on this as a theme, then it should also be echoing in your head all the time. If this is all about that, how exhausted he is. And that's all going to show in the shoulders. That's going to show right up there. That's where we need to look. Here also, I'll just pause it for a second because the drawing's nearly done. This is also a danger here where I have the smudge tool, this little paper towel. They're called different things.
Yes, smudge sticks, tortillon. It's up to you.
Tortillon, yeah. And there's one that has, you can actually see the roll of it. I'd say get the other one.
You can kind of like peel it away.
Yeah, you can actually see it. I found they're not so great. And so I get the ones that are just basically smashed on pulp, really, and then reconstitute it. So I avoid those, even though I think they must have been the very first ones that the Italian masters used. Use this with caution, because this is also one of those tools that's going to seduce you into going, oh, wow, I'm getting the photorealism here. This tool is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Be very careful of it. Use it wisely. And also go back to the theme again, big to small. So I'm doing big swathes and then small swathes with it. So just beware of that. Beware of this smudge tool. But it's a great tool. So it's giving me movement. Look at that. So that's not going to be in a photo. Movement. And you could say, well, now we're getting into comic book here. This is Jack Kirby. How do you show movement in a still image? I call it stillness in motion. So you got a still thing and you show motion in it. How the hell do you do that? Well, you break the rules of photorealism. And I would say if you're a photorealist, try and bring some of this into your photorealism, and it would just change the world. Now you've done what no one else does. I saw an artist recently there, and every face they do, they echo it again as a shadow, so that every face they do has got 3 faces in there. It really changed everything. It just changed everything. So now you've got a style based on a very, very simple premise. Now, here's Go For Your Life.
It sounds like an Eliza Ivanova thing.
Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she? She's fantastic. The artist I'm thinking of is a painter, but she's incredible. If you don't know who she is or you haven't seen her work, I'll be surprised. But she's incredible. And she draws almost the opposite of how I draw. So there are no rules. This is how I eventually went, this is for me. Everything that you see me do here works for me. It's quick without going fast. It feels intuitive. I love it. You know, I really love that I'm not just erasing here. Well, I'm not erasing at all. I'm drawing with the eraser. And so you can, as you've seen, there's been no erasing in this at all. There shouldn't be anyway. If you pull the eraser out, you've told yourself that you made a mistake. And now you've got negativity in your mind. And that's the worst thing you can have. You know, they often say those that survive on desert islands, they have positivity. And it's the same with art. If you want to survive the course of this, be positive with everything you do. So I'm drawing with this eraser. Every once in a while, you'll need to erase something because you've done this fantastic drawing and one thing is rubbish. Sure, get the eraser out. But try not to have the eraser in your hand or even close by. Just leave it. and do another drawing and another
Yeah,
drawing.
and
So
that's fine. Like if you move on to the next one, a bunch of different things happen. Also, people have this really hard time
yeah,
coming to grips with the idea of I've sunk so much time into this drawing and
yeah,
everything. Um, Getting attached to those things, it serves you negatively in many different ways. One of those
it does.
being that you first and foremost, you don't allow yourself to get rid of things that you constructed poorly from the start. So you get really
That's right.
attached to this thing because you think, oh, I put 20 minutes in on this and like rendering this portion, but it was always it looks bad. It was always going to be bad because you laid in the initial sketch for that part badly. And that's fine. It's fine for you to make a bad drawing. You have to go
Yeah,
through all your bad drawings before you start making some decent ones. And every once in a
yeah,
while, you still backtrack and make more bad ones. But
yeah,
if you come to grips with the idea of this is just one drawing that I've done, and I will do many more,
yeah.
that's a good thing. It allows you to
It's a good
move
thing.
on, learn from mistakes, rather than having to hold those mistakes close to your chest purely because you're thinking, I sunk time into this. That's bad.
Yeah, 100%. Well said, Stephen. And also, it's part of the process to do bad drawings. If you're not doing bad drawings, something strange is very strange is happening, because everyone does a bad drawing. Like Steve Houston says to me, he saw the back of a Michelangelo statue, and there was a little drawing by Michelangelo. He says a 6-year-old did it by the looks of it. Michelangelo. Right? That's why he said to Antonio, burn the drawings, burn them all. Because he didn't want people to make it, he wanted people to believe that he was a god. He didn't want people, he did one moment of humility. He said, if people knew how hard I worked on this, they wouldn't be so impressed. Right? It's so good that we had scribes back then. So that was all, it was known from then that, and I said to Marshall when he was on my podcast, I said, Marshall, I did so many bad drawings the other day. And part of me went, you know what? This is so important to a student to see that no matter where you are, you're going to make a bad drawing. And it's just part of the process. Should I put it in my next video tutorial? And Marshall said, yes. And I thought, yes. Yeah. And then I recognized a bad drawing I did. And it was being recorded. I went, geez, that's a bad drawing. Now, do I put it in? Do I show the mortality?
It depends. Sometimes it's a really useful exercise. The one thing I will say, you said if a person isn't making any bad drawings, something very strange is happening. That is a twofold answer to this, a twofold idea. On one hand, they could be just this profound exception, and they're a unique talent that is unmatched, and human achievement should be studied through them. Or
100%.
Or two, the thing that is happening is that they don't have the knowledge yet to know just how bad their drawing actually is. And they're like, everything I've done here is incredible.
Dunning-Kruger, yes.
Yeah.
I had those students come through the class a lot. Bless them,
Yeah. I've taken you away from that one enough. I'll bring this drawing back up here. You said there wasn't that much more left in this one?
It's nearly done. It's nearly done because, my mantra again is the drawing is finished when the artist stops. There's nothing else to say. And so I'm getting very close to that. I just wanted to say this is a figure in anguish, in a desert heat, dying of thirst. So I want to show that in the bones. Now, none of this is I particularly chose a model from the New Masters that was very emaciated looking because I thought he's the perfect model for this. But at the same time, he didn't have this musculature. So he was the perfect model to show the emaciation, but he wasn't the perfect model to show the muscle and anguish. And so, as you can see, look to the top left again and see how much of a difference is happening right now in what I pull out. And look to the bottom left to see how I'm pulling it out from the little diagram that's accompanying this tutorial. Those arrows you see are for the actual movie where I actually describe what's happening there. So I must be describing there the hard edge of the shadow falling off. So when a shadow comes, and this is how we make this monumental, by the way, I'm thinking, make this like Prometheus, like a giant. And how do you do that? Well, show the shadow falling off as if it's the size of a mountain. So it's hard near where the teres major inserts into the arm. And then the shadow falls off very quickly. And usually that happens at a huge distance. So that idea itself is making him look monumental. And that's just an idea. It's a very simple idea. And I put it in my paintings, I put it in my drawings if I want to show that gigantic idea of this larger than life character. And I'm using a lot of, this is the Go for Your Lifetime. I'm using a lot of very simple tools, the tissue, just standard tissue. I got one here, straight off the roll. Tissue will take away a subtle amount of your drawing. The chamois that you wash your car with, that oil rag that you wash it and you take the oil out. Yeah, that'll take a bunch out. And I've often said, if you're a monk on a budget, just wipe the whole thing down with that and start again, and it'll take it all out. But going back to that first thing you were saying, Stephen, about drawings, you know, like who was that artist that tragically passed? And he was so great, and he was on Proko a lot. Kim, I don't want to say his name.
Okay, Kim Jung-gi. Yeah.
Kim Jung-gi. Even, you know, I can't believe how he drew. Yeah. But I think even he said he learned it all. But he was definitely a mind like no others. You know,
I think
really
he
third dimension.
Just conceptualized of something a little bit differently. You know, he realized early on, or naturally was observing things in a 3D space. You know, that's it's a thing that people attribute to this idea of skill. But there are some people who just look at certain things a little bit differently. Or they attribute it to talent, but it is a skill still. It's a thing that you hone.
Yeah, he learned it. But I think his real talent was he was fearless. He just started drawing, didn't he?
Yes.
He never stopped drawing. That guy drew all the time. He just never stopped. So the biggest learning you can have from any of these courses is draw, you know, make a mark. If you make a mark, another mark will follow. If you don't make any marks and you sit waiting for inspiration, nothing's going to happen. So that's an amateur idea, waiting for inspiration. It was probably birthed from old movies that were just being over melodramatic. I'm waiting for inspiration. You know, we saw them all. Basically, that's an amateur idea. You want inspiration? Learn a bit of method, make a mark, and you're off and running.
Just plow through
it. And just go through it and learn how to learn. You know, this is part of what I'm teaching here. Learn how to learn. When to pick these tools up. Why is this the last tool I'm picking up for this? Because it's the big to small idea. So the smallest eraser I have is this little mono eraser. It comes out last.
Mono 0?
I think it is, yeah. It came out last. Yeah, it is that, Stephen. Because it's the smallest thing. So the big to small idea actually comes into the tools as well. Now, let's say you're going to finish a drawing. This is old advertising stuff. I mean, you can't get cheaper than this. The great thing about, for me, drawing is that it's the cheapest tools. Newsprint, charcoal pencil, a couple of erasers. You can make a masterpiece. And it costs practically nothing. So you can get drawing right away. It's not like oils where you have to go and buy tons of oils, which you don't have to do either. And I talk about that in my other courses. But look what I'm doing now. I'm butting the light right up against the shadow. And this is like that artist we were talking about before. I bet he just studied an ant on a ruler one day and just went right in the microcosm of how light reflects, and like I did. You know, I was just fascinated by everything. Just an internal curiosity about the way light falls on things. And I found by looking through a glass that it heightens how our optics work. When you look through a glass, there is a highlight on the edge of a dark every time. And I went, wow, what if I put that in my drawings? And boy, did it work. Look at the dimension of putting a light next to the darkest part. Who would have thought you put the two extremes together like that? Now, what I'm doing there is the extreme, and I'm also honing this drawing by clipping little bits off that maybe I thought could have been drawn better. But what I'm really looking at, and also what I'm looking at here is a corona, the idea of light on the outside of the figure to bring that arm forward. All of that is just forget about the photo reference now. None of that exists in the photo reference.
Yeah, you're designing. It's what's the thing that I think other artists have said, but I most attribute it to Jeff Watts because he said it recently around me. It was the drawing is drawing what you see, what you know, or what you know, what you see, and what you wish you could see.
That's right. Yeah, Jeff's terrific. And Jeff's another one of those artists where you go, how the hell When you see him drawing live, you would swear it's speeded up, how fast he processes things. But nobody draws as much as Jeff Watts. I know that Jeff Watts definitely drew way more than any of the greats in history. Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, really, go have a look at how much they did. It wasn't much, you know. What they did was amazing. But Jeff Watts is you couldn't count the drawings he's done. So when he draws, the decision making is off the charts, brilliant. So draw lots is a way to do it. But when you have a method, when you have an idea, like I'm just running with one idea here, is I'm going to sculpt this using this mono eraser. And this is the first time you see me use the detail hand, by the way. Do you see that? I've switched it around to the signing grip, basically, is what I mean by it.
Yeah, rather than the overhand.
Method. Yeah, it's a really clumsy method. And you might go, how can that be the clumsy method? It's the most solid anchor that you can get. It's clumsy because there's no gesture in it. Yeah. And so it's only for going in close. So if you think detail, detail hand, you go in close. Because everything's been laid down, the gesture, the flow, it's all been laid down. It gives me the total freedom to go in there with the detail hand and lose none of that gesture because it's still in there. It's not been destroyed by getting that detail hand out too soon. So that comes last, big to small. So there you go. That was the drawing finished because I said it was.
Yeah.
Like I say, the drawing's finished when the artist says so. We'll just come back to it.
We do have a couple other questions here. Look at that drawing right there.
Look at it, for goodness sake.
Yeah. So
that's the scan of it. That's me taking the photograph of it afterwards. So you have to really let a lot of stuff go. You've got to let it. There must have been a little bit more of it, maybe. I think. Well, I can't remember.
Possibly. Yeah, I mean, there might have. You could have also just gone through a little bit afterwards and then had some.
Oh no, I don't do that. I don't do that in the course. No, I don't do that. It's all
everything that you make is it like every mark you make or take away in
that whole drawing is in the course. But you can see that you've got to compromise with everything. You know, the lights in the studio and everything like that to get the drawing on the screen. Okay. But have a real good look at what that looks like in real life, close to anyway. Those darks, those lights, all of that stuff in there there's nothing like it. And if you do find the photograph of this, it's a really emaciated character, New Masters Academy photograph. This doesn't resemble it at all, apart from just the pose. The musculature, the drama, all of that stuff is
it's a springboard because you have that knowledge that you were talking about where you can invent, turn the thing on its head and just use it as that starting point. Actually, real quick, if you're okay with it. So look at this drawing that you guys see here, this finished piece, and then I'm gonna go ahead and move back to the start of it where we have that original tracing that you were talking about. There's that massive difference where form you've changed the gesture of the thing, not just in the overall shape, the contour of the thing, but then even within that, like changing the actual plane changes to reinforce the drama that you want to pull out of that. And that's something that you can do if you have that underlying knowledge that you at home right now could get if you grab Patrick Jones's course on proko.com/Patrick Jones. There are many different courses on there, a bunch of them that are the anatomy of style, among many others that Patrick has. And there are some books that you can get as well. Some of those things are a full course where it's something that's a little more expensive, not like this one that's 20% off right now during this limited time. But then you can also get some things, if that number 20 sounds good to you, some of his books are more around that cost in dollars. Yeah. So you guys could pick up those things. But aside from that, Patrick, would you be okay with focusing in on some questions for a little bit?
Yeah, I'd like to. What I'll do as well, Stephen, is I'll put up a painting so that we can see how that's, and we can take the questions while that painting's on the screen, because it's very similar to what we've just done there, to show you why drawing is so important. So let me see how I can do that.
Yeah. Go ahead. If you want to do that one as a screen share, so that way you can be able to show us with your mouse cursor the area that you're talking about. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and take this. I'll take, here, I'll end the video share that you've got.
Okay.
And then if you go ahead and do your share screen on the bottom, share your entire screen, and then we'll be able to see everything that's on your screen. So, but in the meantime, I'm going to take the screen away. You guys who are here in this stream right now, there's not necessarily a massive amount of you, But after we wrap up today, which is still a little ways off, I would love to take you guys over into another YouTube channel who's doing some live streaming. We'll see if the person that I think that we should go ahead and kind of like do something like a Twitch raid, if they'll still be online at the time when we finally get to there. But I would love to take you guys over to someone who has a little bit less viewers right now. So looks like you're getting that sorted out, Patrick.
Yes.
Okay. Let me know. That's the image that you'd like to use?
Oh, you've seen it? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the stage so they can see everything that's on your screen now here.
Okay. Oh yeah, so I can take questions now. So does that mean you can see the cursor?
Yep.
Now
exactly.
The cursor. Oh, you can see the cursor.
Yep. Exactly.
Wow,
so now they can see everything. So we have a few different questions. There was one from, this is a more recent one, and then I'll dig into some of the earlier ones that we've got. This one is from Carlos Rue. They were asking, what advice would you give to someone who wants to get out of the practice trap? What I think, do you have any specific thing that you believe that means that you want to address?
It's such a brilliant question. It really is. That's the great thing about, like I say, students, they teach me how to teach better as well. Yeah, how to get out of the practice trap. The practice trap is a real thing. If all you're doing is just practicing all the time, what it is you put an anchor on yourself and said, I'm not ready to draw because I haven't fully got all the knowledge yet. That is a trap. Just start drawing. The actual drawing process will teach you what you don't know. And then you're not in a trap. You're in a learning process. So for instance, you've just seen me draw the back of that character. Look at us in paint. Once it's in paint, it's a whole different world because now you're working with layers. You can rub back so much, but once you've laid that paint down and it dries, you're back into the world of, if you don't know what you're doing, it can very easily fall apart. And that's what happens that's probably the fear of the practice trap. I'm too afraid of this painting because I know once the pencil sketch is gone, I won't be able to paint anything further and I'll just have to completely copy what I see. So the practice trap, the very simple way to get out of it is to start drawing immediately and just call them your clangers. You've seen me do it on Proko. You go, oh, there's a bad drawing. It's part of the process. And you put it aside and you keep it. You don't go, oh, well, you can throw it away, but let's say you keep that drawing instead of throwing it away. And then you do another drawing. And let's say 2 weeks from now, you're not practicing anymore. You're just drawing and you're trying your very best to draw with style and with grace. And the way to do that is just to tell yourself you're brilliant. I'm brilliant at this. Take a bit of Dunning-Kruger and stick it in your potion and do that. And you'll be amazed how much it works. And then look at that drawing from before, and you can see that you've got better and better. Now, let's say that you had worked on that drawing until you thought it was great, and it's still bad. You've lost all the history of what made it bad. But if you kept it, you can see the history. You can go, the reason it's bad, because you got a better drawing over here, is for all these reasons. And you can look at it, and you can look at this one, and you go, boy, I was too heavy on the tones here. I was too focused on detail. Look how much better this one is. So what I would say is when you get a good drawing, call it your benchmark. Stick it in the corner of your drawing board. Use your Dunning-Kruger and say, that's the best drawing I've done. That's the benchmark. And I can see why it's good. And now start drawing again and always refer to it and go, oh. And it's a bit like what I was talking earlier. You've probably gone small to big, complex to simple. Long, light, and loose is hard to reverse. Long, light, and loose. Long, light, and loose. Short, dark, stiff, right? You've probably done that, and you've got an awful drawing because of that.
Absolutely.
So all of those things, if you keep on drawing, those things become automatic, and you don't have to think about them anymore. So I say it to students. It's not platitudes, but I say it to students. But I don't need it anymore because it's already in here. It's in my internal art engine because I've been doing long, light, and loose, big to small. If things start to fall off the rails, I go, oh, a bit lighter there, a bit looser there. You know, you can feel it. You don't even say it, you just feel it. You go, it's a bit too tight. And you can work it all out. And that's why I was able to paint this picture with all the fluidity that's in it, because I was always drawing when I was painting. Always with the paintbrush, I was going a little bit more on the scapula, a little bit more of the rhythm around these intercostal muscles that are over the ribs, a little bit more rhythm in them. A little bit, what was missing in the photograph, or what was in the photograph that was too much, I'd take out. What was missing, I would put in. Like the wrinkles on the neck was too many, and I took a few out. Things like that. I mean, that whole hand didn't exist. I had to put another hand in there. The photo I was working from. I think, did I paint this during COVID? There was a time in COVID where I couldn't hire models, and I had to resort to the old days, which is to go and find photo reference to fit my vision. And this was the mighty Rajiv at the New Masters Academy. And when I went to the New Masters Academy and it was the time when I came and met all you guys, Stephen. It was not far away. Well, it's on the scale of America.
Yeah, in here it's not very far. There it's a whole country.
Yeah, it was still at Amtrak, which was wonderful. Journey all the way down the coast. But I asked for Rajiv, and when I met him, I was so everybody's in awe of everybody else. He was all in awe of me, and I was all in awe of him. Legend. Somebody said in the studio, "Here he comes," and got my panic buttons going. He says he's in the car park. He says, "Stop building it up. Here he comes. He's coming in the door now." It was Rajiv, and when he opened the door, the guy goes, "The legend." Can't we even speak? And all Rajiv says was, "I'm really hungry. Is there any food?" Because he had missed his lunch. And I says, "Yeah, I bought too much here." And we got on right away because everyone's human. But I gifted him a she clay print of this. Nice. And it was like you had that artwork in the back there, Stephen. It made such a big impression, because art does. Artists, even if you don't do it for commercial reasons, it's such a gift, It's a gift for all of us. It's a gift for the artist doing it. It's a gift for the person you give it to. It's a gift for the person just looking at it.
Absolutely.
But everything that I've just talked about in the pencil drawing there is in this. I mean, look at the silhouette of this hand, how much I've taken out as far as detail is concerned to really show the glow of the fire around the hammer, because really this is the main focus of this drawing. But I want to show the power of the forger. This is the forge of the gods. This is the god that forges the future and the past with his hammer, right? Greek myths are bizarre, but they're terrific. So everything's about gold. You can see the gold streaming down the cliffs. All this stuff's just going around in my head the whole time while I'm doing it. But it gives me a chance to really spiral up and get that flow all the way right round to his face again. You can use the golden ratio. I don't use that anymore. I use a flow method. It's basically that, but in rhythm. So all the focus is in a certain area, but I'm doing it with a rhythmic idea rather than a grid idea. So I never put grids on anything.
It's great.
Once you do enough of anything, you can let it go. It becomes just an internal thing. And you can see that it's a canvas. You can see the weave of it there. So it always amazed me. Yeah, go on, Stephen.
There was a question that came up, and you brought this up yourself. It's pertinent because you said it yourself, but they were asking about the origin of the clangers thing. This was a show, I believe.
It was a TV show called The Clangers when I was a kid. I just loved it. And basically the clangers, they were little mice they lived on the moon. And they didn't know anything. They weren't smart, but they were inherently smart, because it was a bit like what Richard Branson said once. If you don't know how to do something and someone gives you the opportunity to do it, say yes, and then learn how to do it. So that's what the clangers were like. They were entrepreneurs. So they'd find some space junk and they wouldn't know what to do with it. And they would bash it into some kind of shape, and then they'd have something to cook on, for instance. And I thought, boy, it looked like rubbish, and they made something out of it because they weren't encumbered by dot. They were full Dunning-Kruger clangers. And I just thought, boy, those clangers, they didn't care about how it looked. It was still functional. This pile of scrap became something at the end of it. And so that's why I call it the clangers. It'll come to something. Start with something. It's going to work. I mean, you can see me go through the process here. I mean, to be honest, I like that version just as much as the finished version, because it shows the artist's thoughts more. There's a lot of roughness in there. But at the end of the day, I promised this. This is what people are looking for. They're looking to come into a show
Yeah.
and just be taken into. We get up close to that canvas and just be taken into that world, and you can see all the lost edges, those Renoir. You might go, oh, the abstract artists, what can we learn from them? Tons. You can see all of that stuff in there. You can see the lost edges that all the abstract artists even the pop artists give us. They give us all this license to go back into realism and take what they did and put it in more subtly. And now you've got a new style. You've got this magic realism rather than just a dull render.
One of the nicest things that you can do, I mean, outside of looking at people's art and then seeing what the strengths are, what makes it so visually interesting, is to look at the previous stage in the process, so you can see the actual thought process, the sketches, the things that become the work. I think those are incredible things.
I love it.
Ben Eblin Design here in the chat. Ben Eblin, another artist.
Hey Ben, how you doing?
You guys know each other well.
We know each other. We've had talked together. Ben's amazing. Ben's one of those people. Yeah, I said the Christian once. I said Ben's one of those people that could do anything. He's like the Clangers. He could do without it. That sounding like it was a bit derived.
He's like the mice that lived on the moon.
A bit derided. He's like the smart Clanger. He would have picked it up and done something great with it right away. So I believe Ben could do anything. If he wasn't an artist, I think he'd build rockets. I think he could do anything he puts his mind to. Yeah. There's an amazing mind there. But what does Ben say?
He was just saying that we were handsome, which I mean, he's right. When he's right, he's right. No,
like I say, he's a smart guy. He knows everything.
Jillian Cole earlier in the chat had asked, "Does Patrick still use tracing for any of his work nowadays?" Do you use
I do.
Or you do?
I do, but very lightly. So much lighter than what you saw. So let's say we have, because basically there's academia art and there's loose art, right? So let's say, like I just did this as an experiment. Basically, this is my book, Oil Painting Techniques, and it was basically in between jobs because I've always been over the mind because I came from advertising, and I always wanted to be an artist and nothing else. And I soon found that it's very hard to be an artist and nothing else, unless you are self-motivated and you always have an idea. I have a whiteboard right here with ideas on it that I jot down all the time. I'm sure Stan does the same thing. And in fact, I was listening to Stan the other day. He notates as he walks.
Exactly. Yeah, he has an Obsidian repository, a vault that he uses.
I better get that Obsidian. I have to have that because I've always got ideas and then they just flash by. Mm-hmm. But what this was a demonstration that there's no difference between commercial art and fine art. The only difference is that how it's defined anyway is that an art director has got an input, which means it's not 100% pure. It means you are at the direction or the puppet of someone else. So I became my own art director. I says, okay, you've got 12 days to do this painting. I want this and I want that. So I was devil's advocate. I'm the art director. And so I go, okay, I've had this commission, which is a pretend commission. So I go get the photo shoot. I do a little bit of photo bashing. I pose for it myself. And then I change the face. I change the face there with smudge tools and things. And then now I have my photo reference. So I would have lightly traced this, like you've seen in the other drawing, and then start painting the way you saw me draw as well. Because people expect it. They expect that academia. And it's very hard to do something small, big like that in a short time. So I had to take that and then project it onto a big canvas, which meant I just basically did a small drawing, printed it out on big sheets. So basically I just enlarged everything in Photoshop, printed it out in reverse, turned it around, traced it down onto the canvas. So it looked like that monstrosity that we saw on the top left of the thing, and then start drawing. And I spend the whole day drawing. And throw that away pretty much right away. It's just to make sure that the proportions, and it does nothing else beyond that really. Because once it's on the canvas, it's not moving from that point. I mean, I can change bits and pieces, but it's not moving from that point. So it's very important that I know that I'm not going to get to the bottom and there's no room for the legs. Do you know what I mean? And then have to start again. So it's basically that, is to make sure that everything fits onto that canvas. And now I can start drawing. So I spend the whole day doing a really nice drawing. Yeah. And the art collector always wants the drawing because they see how nice it is. And from that point, off I go and start rendering, but I'm always painting or drawing as I paint. So yeah, in answer to that, there's one there. So that's the drawing, by the way. So basically I had a really schematic line drawing, and then I take big sheets of tracing paper and I put it over the schematic, which is the really rough thing that you saw on the top left of the thing. And I spend all day making a really nice drawing based on all the photographs I've taken and everything. So that's the really nice drawing. And I do it in reverse. And then I take that entire sheet and I turn it around and I see everything that's wrong with it. And I draw it again.
Gotcha.
So it's a lot of drawing, but I know that I can't lose. That drawing is so good now. But I can lose because once you paint on top of it, the drawing's gone. You better be able to draw.
It disappears. There's a question here. John Doe in the chat was asking about where you write things down when you have those ideas. You mentioned the idea of like a whiteboard. Where do those go?
Yeah. All right. So the big ideas are on the whiteboard. So on the whiteboard, actually, I just scrubbed it today because I've done all my chores. Everything's been done. It's like I just did my Texas, and that's such a horrible thing for me. When I have to do text day, I enjoy it. I go, okay, it's text day, the worst day of the in the calendar year. And what I do is I make a big nice curry or something and have lots of coffee and cake, and I just indulge. I'm
in
like
on it.
Bathos. I'm like Bathos. I'm just, and that's and I kind of ignore the horrible task. And then at the end of the day, I go, okay, it's a new quarterly year. And I wipe the whiteboard and I go, what are you going to put on there, Patrick? It's going to be marvelous after that horror of the Texas. It's going to be. So I've not put anything up there at the minute. But yeah, you can put it in your notes. You can put it, but usually if it's something, a brief thought, I put it straight on the pencil drawing, straight onto it right away. I always notate.
I'm going to dig in on these questions. I want to plow through the ones that we got because we have about 19 minutes left in the time that we had initially budgeted here. So I'm just going to go straight into it. And if we start going too long on one, I'm going to plow in with another. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I've got one here. This is from Jillian, who asked earlier, what are some examples of good embellishment?
Good embellishment. Oh boy, definitely Alfredo Alcala on John Buscema's work. Just before I lose the thought, because this is one of those moments, you can actually see here the difference between academia and just drawing straight on. This is how I paint as I draw right here. So there's no trace, there's no anything at all. There's just a blank canvas, and I get burnt umber out and I start painting. And I give myself 8 hours to do this. I said, okay, you've got 8 hours. You can't spend any more time on that, and just enjoy it. And that's what I do. And for me, this is where I think most artists end up. They end up going, all that other stuff's such a chore. You know, when we were kids, we believed it was just magic. So make it that. And so these are the paintings that I do for just absolute fun. And really not just so for fun. Like, for instance, this one here became a painting. But I made it, this for me is, I like this as much, if not more, than the final painting. And so that's basically an idea, and also based on something I always loved, which was a John Singer Sargent painting set in an Arabian courtyard. And I always loved the light in it. So I thought, I'm going to do something like that. And did that one. I'll see if I can find the painting for it. There it is there. So there's the final painting. Now, a collector wants that. But also I'm finding collectors want the other thing too. They just don't know it yet, but they're not prepared to take a chance on an idea. It's just an idea if you say, I want to do it roughly. Well, show me what that looks like. And so when I show them, it's a whole different world. But this is a different world too. I mean, you get really involved in this. This is why collectors want this stuff. They get involved. They can come in and see this a million times and see something new. They can see the heat of that sheet with the sun just bouncing right off it. They can see all these lost edges. They can hone right in and see the detail on these little bits of gold. And from a distance, it looks really detailed. But when you get up close, it's just brush strokes. It's just marks.
Yes.
And so that's a joy. You know, it's a joy to know that it was painted by a human hand. And I think that's where we'll always win out. It's a human hand. We all know AI, the artifacts in it now, and it looks, you know, mostly horrific. On first glance, it's an amazing thing. On second glance, not so much.
Yeah, you just dig in a little bit.
you dig in a little bit and you start to see weirdness.
Yeah, it's
But
it's the pretty girl at the bar, you know, the friend of a friend of a friend who you're like, oh man, they're really attractive. They seem really cool, and then you
yeah,
actually get to know them, and then it's not great, you know. Like
it's not.
these are those things. Upon closer inspection, what looked fine
Yeah,
was not, in fact, fine.
that's it, absolutely right. But even in my mind as well, I mean, I'm starting to look at people's sketches more than their paintings because I just love to see how the mind worked. But you
Mm,
can see the mind in action here. This is from my old painting masterclass book, I think. You can see once you really get into it, just love the meditative idea of it. I mean, look at the shadow underneath the arm there, for instance. That's just pure burnt umber, thinned right down, and it's already making a big statement. It's put me it give me a sharp edge on that long head of the tricep, and I know where that tricep inserts. It inserts right there. You can see it in the paint itself. You can actually see the scapula there. This is
mhm.
basically based on the really finished drawing, by the way. So it's not a trace anymore. It's the finished
Yeah,
drawing based on the light trace. So once you've got that done, you really can't lose unless you don't know how to draw, because here the drawing's gone and it's not coming back. All right, and neither it should, because it'll just hinder your progress. So the fact that the drawing's gone now means I can start drawing with paint again and start
mhm.
to really feel the improvements of everything. The pronated. I mean, I've got a whole movie on in this course, by the way, on the pronated arm, what all the muscles are, and I draw it very slowly. It's in week 3, I think, of the
Mhm.
anatomy of style that I'm teaching. And basically, if you want to know what's the most complicated thing in the human figure, it's this hand down to that point there, down to the in
Okay.
the bone. And I do a whole, I think it's maybe 15 minutes on that in the course, because the course is 14 hours. So that's
Yeah.
just a small part of the course, but you can keep rewinding it over and over to really understand how you can change that back and forth. You can see that I'm putting in as many ideas of an overcast light and then put it in the hard lights to really get that shimmer of a
Mhm.
mermaid in the sun. So you can just see it bit by bit how many changes are happening there all the way through that.
Mhm.
That's a very tight drawing under there. And this is the different method here. There's no underpainting to this. I'm painting straight onto that white. You can
Yeah, I was
actually
gonna say
see.
this is a different beast entirely.
Yeah, this is basically, look, you know what? I'm going to cut out the middleman. I'm painting straight on this canvas,
Mhm.
and that's a lot of years
Yeah,
put into that
absolutely.
to be able to do that. That is tough going.
Speaking of
But
the years put in, we had another
yeah,
question. This is from Wolf
yep.
Knightley. They had asked, after what you have learned since working on greeting cards, do you think you could do that job without a lightbox tracing and be fast enough now?
Oh yeah. Well, it wasn't the greeting cards that I used the light box for. It was the advertising work. The greeting cards were just all cartoons. They were fluffy bunnies and
Mm,
it was basically generic. It was very easy to go, oh, this is good fun, and then go, you know what? I'm just doing the same thing over and over. Because I remember saying to the art director, he said, I love your bunnies. He says, can you do me a rabbit? I says, okay, a rabbit. I says, now how would I do a rabbit in this style? He says, just change the ears of the pussycat, and then it's a rabbit. And I went, the boy's right, because they were so
yeah,
stylized. I just changed the ears of the rabbit, and it's a pussycat, or vice versa. And I went, you know what? It's not much challenging this anymore. And
yeah.
so I
You're
went
like,
into, I went into
yeah, this
advertising.
suggestion of a thing is enough.
Yeah, but that's a good question, because you know what? I address it in one of my books. My favorite book, actually, the Figures from Life book, where I take an idea that would have been an advertising job of a figure and say to myself, there's no light box for this. The art director's asked you to do this. Do it without that idea. Because I had more experience by this point. Because when I went into that studio, I was only 22. So, the guys in the studio were usually always older than me by a decade. And so I basically learned from them. But, a decade or two on, I set myself a task of a drawing. There's no light box, but the art director wants the drawing. And I
Mhm.
did it in 20 minutes, and it was better than light boxing. So, yes,
Heck
the
yeah,
answer to that. Yes, I can do it, and
yeah,
I wish I'd done it earlier. I wish I'd
yeah.
have just said to the art directors, "This is what you're getting," and they would have loved it. They just didn't know it. Well, I didn't have the skills yet. This is the main
Yeah,
thing
it's a hard
to do
one
it.
until you're in that space where you can do that in that short time.
Yeah,
Similarly, Jay Scott in the chat had just asked this one. Thank you for the new question.
Yeah.
They said, do you suggest just drawing what you're into, like comics, animation, etc., or more of a school approach, or maybe just whatever keeps you drawing consistently? I have a couple of
100%.
this one.
100%. I mean, there's no better place to do this than America. So when we were in the UK, when I was drawing, I was working in Manchester. We didn't have those big paperback companies there. You know, we had them in London, and I worked for them for quite a while. I mean, I got a false start, really, a marvelous false start, where there wasn't many people could do what I could do because there was no computers then, and I did it all traditionally. So we were a bit thin in the ground, actually. And I found at 24 years old, I remember someone saying to me, "You can't do that. The guys doing that are in the business for, you know, I looked it up. They're actually the best of them were at like 36 years old. I don't know what it was about that period. So they were a decade or more above my skill level. But still, there were so few people doing it at any level close to that. And I was one of them. And so I was hired straight off the bat with all of the, you know, me looking at the painting, go, it's nowhere near Jim Burns's quality. And yet they thought it was terrific. And so another idea, like we talked about earlier, just do it early. Don't wait. I mean, I could have said, I'm not good enough. Like this person said to me, you're not good enough yet. I went to those agencies and I said, here's an example of my work. And they went, well, can you do 4 books in a month? and I says, yeah. So thank God, because this guy, I won't name him, has just let us down and the deadline's up. And I did those 4 and I did them pretty easy. And that for them was more important than this guy that was a decade or so above me because he wasn't hitting the deadline. He didn't hit, he actually killed his career right there. He could have said earlier in the day, he says, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. But he waited till the final hour. And so they usually give you a false deadline because they want to have a bit of time up their sleeve. There was no false deadline on this. Because
they put you on artist time.
Yeah, so I had a painting each week. I had to finish a full book jacket painting each week and delivered it. And I tell you, see, when I did that, all I got was one manuscript after another on my desk.
Yeah, if you can turn work around, let's say even if you were like in actual like skill level, like actual artist mastery, if you were 65% the artist of the other person who took too long, was unreliable on their turnaround time and everything, they would still come to you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought my advertising years were lost years, but when I think about it, they weren't, because the deadlines were so tight that you had to find a quick way to do everything. And then when I finally went into publishing and said, I'm not doing anything else but publishing now, it was such a relaxed thing. But because there was one manuscript after another, it became less of that, because I went, okay, there's a month ahead. It wasn't just, I got a book jacket, you know, I'll spend the whole month and then show my friends and go down to the pub and say, look, I'm being published. That's my book jacket. There was like one after another, to the point where, you ended up back with a week to do each one. It was a bit like that.
I would say I share this experience. I thought my years in advertising, in video advertising, were some sort of waste, because I was doing commercial advertising, you know, at 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute if you got real lucky, you know. But then in the future, here I am working at Proko, and one of the things that I already knew how to do as an implicit, like a skill that's just inside of me, was edit 15 and 30 second long videos that communicated something succinctly. That's short. That's reels, you know. You gain skills from doing things that you think might be a waste.
And I want to do a shout out for you guys at Proko, because that skill is just so amazing. You know, when I came down and Proko put me on the spot, Stan put me on the spot, he said, you want to draw? And what do you say? You can't say no. I says, oh, sure. He had me mic'd up and the lights on in 2 seconds. And I thought I did awful drawings. And then you guys put all the comedy into it, Stan peeping around the corner and everything. It just made it a pleasant experience. I went, you know what? That wasn't a bad drawing. Even though I thought it was a comedy. Because you made it fun. You know, the actual editing of it was such a joy to watch. So a big call out for you guys. It's amazing what you do. That's why I'm so happy to come back each time. Really are. Incredible.
do you want to answer one more question or talk about a piece that you've got there as the last thing that we do?
Yeah, well, I was trying to find that drawing, that question from earlier. If you had, if an advertising job came along and you didn't have the light box, could you do it? And actually, you have the drawing in one of these books.
It's great.
So I'm trying to find that. I'll tell you what, I'll just type in figures from life. Go ahead. I'll do that while you're asking.
I'm just gonna remove the screen so people don't just see your everything on your computer during that time.
Thank you. That's my big fear.
Yeah, about the person earlier who had asked about the idea of if they should just draw something that they're into. One thing that I want to make sure that they think of is you should first and foremost do the things that you enjoy, whether that's what you enjoy making or what you enjoy seeing. But something that I always want to remind people of is the idea that you don't have to only be into the thing that you enjoy making. What you enjoy making and what you like looking at might be wildly different things. Patrick's favorite art might not be ladies in like armor bikinis and stuff, that might not be present at all in the work that he likes looking at. He might be really into landscape photography, but these things all inform each other. So enjoy a wide breadth of things, experience those things, try them out, and see how they inform the other art that you make.
Yeah, that was a great question, and it flew past me without thinking. So yes, absolutely 100% that. And also, oh boy, I thought I found the thing and I hadn't. And also do what you want. I was talking to a guy recently there. I says, I really don't want to do this stuff. And he was a real hedonist. He says, just do what you want. And I went, wow, that's such a revelation to me.
I think he's got a good idea.
It's a pretty random idea there. And he was right. Just do what you want. And so, like I say, America's a great place for that because it's such, what have you got, 350 million people. And
something
we didn't have that. Yeah, we didn't have that in the UK. And so we were pretty much stuck in a situation where we had to do whatever came at us. Whereas you can be very niche in America. You can be a fantasy artist. That's why
I got you.
I was able to be a fantasy artist because the internet came along, and I was able then to find an agent in the US, in New York. And then I could get access to that. So you have that access to be niche. You don't need all 350 million eyes on you. It won't take that many.
Take just a couple thousand, and that's plenty.
Yeah. And the minute you become niche, then you've got a very core fan base that want to see everything you do. Whereas if you just do everything, it's all sheets to the wind. Nobody really is paying any attention. Thank God I found it.
All right.
And they will. I didn't. I just opened the same one again.
Oh, no.
Let me try one more time. Oh, God. When will it end? I still want to do it because it's such a great question. It has to be this one. It's 117 megabytes. Come on. It has to be that one.
Yeah. Let me see what else we've got here in case there is anything else. I think any of the other questions here might be kind of like a bigger answer. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and add my screen in here.
I found it, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
All right. What have we got?
Okay, so we got figures from life. Where are we? Where did it go? So basically, so all my books are almost like the movies, but you don't see every single microscopic mark. But I try and put that down in words as much as possible if you learn better from words. But this is the drawing here. So this was the one, let's say, 30 minutes I spent on this. And I mean going very slow. And it talks about that very question. How would I do this if I didn't have that camera obscura? And I talk about it all the way through here. And so I started drawing without any of that mechanical hindrance, because I think it is a hindrance, because you're so much involved in copying what you see. And if it's not exactly what is in the photograph, you think you failed. And so you have this false sense of what's important, which is it shouldn't look what it looks like in the photo, because the photo is an aberration. It's all distorted. It's got no artistic merit in it apart from the great pose of the model. It doesn't know what the hell it is. Whereas we do, it's a bit like AI art. In fact, it is, isn't it? It's an AI vision. Click, and there it is with all its ruination in it. and it has no flow to it. And so I had a photographic reference for this. And I just went, okay, there's the photo, start drawing. And very soon threw that photograph away. But I never light boxed anything. And in 30 minutes, I had a little drawing here, there it is there, that was way better than what I would have done with the light box, with all that magic of light lines and dark lines and pentimento, like you can see in the what the artist's first thoughts were there. So that was the idea right there. And that's where I realized I wish I had the Anatomy of Style when I was that age. If that book had landed on my desk, I went, who wrote this? Oh, it's Patrick from the future. Thanks very much. It's exactly what I needed. And that's the reason why I wrote all these books.
Thanks, me? Thanks, me?
Thank me of the future. Because it was so hard to do. It was so hard to do when you don't know anything. You're just copying what you see. Yeah, whereas now, I make sure that whatever I put on there is just expressive, has every mark that I enjoy doing, doesn't look like the photo. If you want to put it into one sentence, it doesn't look like the photo. And that's the wonder of it. There you go. But thanks for that question. That was a terrific question.
All right. So here is the last thing that I want to send you guys away with. One, the person who I was looking at for us to possibly take everyone over to after this stream, they've already ended streaming, and I can't find like anyone else streaming art on YouTube conveniently that I know that I can say is a good artist and worth your time hanging out with right now, unfortunately. But everyone who's in the chat here right now, I just gave you guys the YouTube artist who I did want to have you guys go check out. He's got videos that you can go watch. Let him know Proko and Patrick Jones sent you, first and foremost, and then go over there, watch some videos, and have a good time. But after that, I want to remind you guys that the whole reason that we were here today talking about things was to discuss Patrick Jones's, this man here's, new course that is on Proko. It's some of the wisdom that was present in his book and also present in that whole course that he taught to that smaller group of students to hone over that period of time. Now refined and presented in this succinct, nice little package. I guess I say succinct, but you said it's 14 hours of content.
It's 14 hours. It is succinct because, it's hundreds of hours. If you went to university, you could only compact maybe the first week into the entire semester. Because it would take so much drawing and time in class to have that done, because classes are usually only 3 hours in the class. But 14 hours, if you got 14 hours solid instruction out of a semester in a 3-hour class, is it even mathematically possible? So it's better than university, really, as far as, that was a big call, wasn't it? That was a big,
listen, you know your value. That's a good thing, Patrick.
I just blurted it right out. I didn't mean it to sound like that. But let's go back to younger Patrick. That's what I'd be looking at. If this thing existed when I was 22, oh boy. I keep saying that year because that was such a formative year. That's when I went to London and was told you can't do this. I went to London and everyone said, go back home. And I said, that ain't going to happen. And it didn't. But it was hard. They were right. And what it is, it told me that they would give up at the first stretch or the second stretch or the third stretch. But I was never going to do that. If I'd have had this, I wouldn't even have had, I never had a dot. But if I'd have had that book in my hand, I'd have gone, this is a breeze. I'll just go over and do everything in this book and just keep thumbing through it. And that's where that started. And this is where it goes. It goes all the way to this course.
And it continues today. So check out that course. It's 20% off right now. If you can't pick up that full course because maybe it's just a little bit out of your price range, please do check out that link right there. Is not to just this one course, that's to all of Patrick's offerings here on Proko, at proko.com/Patrick Jones. You can also see his books, which are a lower cost that you can still learn along with. He's got different books that are different learning styles. Some of those are just the academic type of like straight on teaching about more specific parts of the process. But he's also got other types of learning styles for you there with the Osmosis book that will have you just drawing alongside that and taking away from that in a way that is much more, I guess, like intuitive, like kind of like a learn with me as I do it, rather than just, this is the medial epicondyle, like there's information that you just learn naturally with. So I really recommend it to you guys. Patrick's a great teacher.
Thanks, Steve. And I want to do a shout out for the students that are buying any of this stuff. I really feel the pinch myself. And what the pinch must be like where you guys are now. I mean, I've been through so many downturns, so many crashes in the economy, and I really feel the pain of, every time someone buys anything from me, I really appreciate it because I know what it's like to try and struggle so hard to become an artist. I didn't start with anything at all, just dust. And so I want that for you guys too. I want you to find art and make it your friend, regardless of where you go with it as well. But I'm really aware of just how tough times are today. So I really appreciate everybody that helps me do what I do.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't have said it better myself. Everyone out there buying a course or even just watching YouTube videos and paying with them watching ads, I appreciate it. You guys are heroes, and I appreciate every single one of you. All right, Patrick, what does the rest of this weekend represent for you? Are you going to be out there making art? Should other people do like you do?
Well, it's a whiteboard. I'm so excited. It's a whiteboard. So I have an idea that I can't talk about. So there's also these things. There's these things called NDAs.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what they are, it's non-disclosure agreements. So you can't disclose what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I have that. So I have something, but I can't talk about it.
Okay.
But always have, and if you don't have that, then have something like you saw me do that, the Pirate and the Mermaid painting. I mean, I had no commission for that. But see, the second it was finished and I put it online, I says, I've just done this as an experiment. A French collector says, I want that. So There you go. So it's 12 days of fun. And then it could have been a commission to begin with, which kind of goes full circle to the idea that fine art and commercial art are the same thing. It's just where it starts. Was it made for the sale or did it sell after the making? Yeah. Exactly. If it basically the idea is if it sells after you've painted, it's fine art. Yeah. But the irony was I made it with a false art director, a pretend art directing me the whole time. And you can't go over the 12-day limit. And so it was finished on 12 days. So it's a good path. There you go. You can do anything. Put your mind to it. But have an idea. For anyone who's in my neck of the woods, for the first time in ages, I have a piece in a show. If you find yourself around Gallery Nucleus this weekend, I've got a piece in a How to Train Your Dragon theme show. Go check it out. Gallery Nucleus is a great gallery, even when they're not lowering their standards to have my subpar art in there. So put it up. I don't have that with me. I don't actually think we're supposed to show the final pieces until after the show is actually started. All right, okay. Since it starts tomorrow. But yeah, if you want to see that, you can go over to my Instagram over here with a little preview of that. But if you want some real art knowledge, you can follow Patrick Jones over on Instagram with this name that you see on screen. Because whenever he does get to show that stuff that he's working on under NDA right now, that'll probably get talked about there or on his Art Agents podcast that he teases on there whenever a new episode's coming out. So thank you for taking the time, Patrick. I appreciate it. Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate you. Yeah. And everyone. Have a good one, everybody.